I had a case that I tried in 2016 in Suffolk County on behalf of a client called Brittany Williams as a result of being struck by an automobile at high speed. When I met Brittany, she was obviously severely brain injured. She couldn't speak. Her ability to walk was completely compromised. She was in a wheelchair, unable to care for her 2 young children. It was as serious a brain injury case as I've ever had. On every case, the best storyteller you have is your client, because they can share with the jury what happened and their version of the accident. I unfortunately did not have that on my side in the Brittany Williams case. I was starting out with only the defendant's version of events, and her version of event was that my client ran out in front of her vehicle on a dark, terrible, rainy night, and my client entirely caused herself to be injured. I'm confronted with a situation where if the jury understands that to be true, Miss Williams gets nothing. When I met her, she was in an upstate facility, a Medicaid recipient. The level of care was horrible. It was as sad a case as I ever was confronted with, and to be honest, I was completely scared that I wouldn't be able to take care of her. When I got hired on the case, I was the lawyer hired to try the case. All the discovery had taken place, all the depositions had taken place, all the documentary questions had been largely asked. And when I got into the case, I said, I'm starting at the very beginning. I'm going to act as if I just got this case and do my very best to prove that Miss Williams did not cause her own accident. I had to recreate the accident. And if you think about it, what is the jury going to be asked? Well, was the defendant acting reasonably under the circumstances? Did Miss Williams, in fact, run in front of her vehicle? What could that defendant see on that night? A lot of people will take photographs of the scene at night and try to recreate it that way. The truth is, that may work for during the claims process of a case where you're trying to settle a case with an insurance company, but such a photograph would never see the light of day in a trial, because the burden you have in order to get a photograph like that into evidence is to say that it fairly and accurately depicts the way that the roadway looked at that night. And a good lawyer, a good defense lawyer, will knock out that photograph that you took 2 years after the accident when you got hired very easily. So what I did on that case, I don't know if anyone else that ever did, and it was the first time for me, was I located an expert in contrast. And contrast is, what is the difference? What stands out on a roadway? What makes something visible at night? I hired a guy from the United States Naval Academy who taught everyone from regular midshipmen in the Naval Academy to literally Navy SEALs, and teaching Navy SEALs how to operate at night and how to calibrate what they're seeing at night based on contrast. It's a wonderful credibility thing. Credibility is the underpinning of everything when you think about it. Like, do you believe somebody? Do you trust them? So I felt that retaining somebody from the United States Naval Academy is a pretty good starting point. By the time I was done introducing this guy, I knew that I had laid down a foundation of trust with the jury. And that's the key to winning any case, is trust. If the jury thinks you're just some empty suit who is telling them a story, they're not going to see things your way. You're going to lose your trial. My expert put together a very complex spectrum of evidence where he tested the actual illumination of the actual subject vehicle. I wanted to see what things looked like driving that car. Very important that you do your best to feel the evidence yourself as a trial lawyer. I spent hours and hours at that accident scene, and it teaches you a lot. I tracked the moon phase for the night of that accident, went to the accident site when the moon phase was the same, when the weather conditions were the same, and in that vehicle, so I could see and feel what it felt like to drive that roadway. I used NASA data with weather to show what the actual condensation was at the site of this accident and juxtapose that to the elevation of roadway. So happened that the accident took place at the bottom of a hill. The amount of water molecules in the air at the bottom of a hill are different from the top of the hill, and that impacts the density of the fog. These are things that I went through with and explained through this wonderful expert from the Naval Academy. And what it did was it brought the jury closer to an understanding of what happened that night. I also retained physicians and retained biomechanical engineers. It's very important on every case that you establish credibility with the jury and give them the ammunition they need, the evidence that they need to make their best judgment. And God willing, that judgment's going to benefit your client.